Welcome to The Ideas Machine, a podcast about turning ideas into action. I'm Helena Trail, a neurodivergent designer, painter, founder of New Studio, and relentless storyteller. I chat with creative thinkers about how they ideate, iterate, and implement their ideas. This is your space for honest conversations, creative tools, and a reminder that your ideas are worth building. Welcome to this episode of The Ideas Machine. I'm joined by Ria Averill, the founder of House Talent. Thank you, Ria, for being here. Just quickly, before we begin, in terms of the format for The Ideas Machine, we're going to run through Ria's experience as an entrepreneur and creative, going through ideate, iterate, and implement, the three favourite I's, I guess, that I have. And then if you would like to also watch the podcast, this is an audio-visual podcast, so you can watch us on YouTube or listen on Spotify. So let's jump into it. Ria, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you for having me. I'm Ria. I run a boutique talent agency called House Talent. I've been running it for almost 3 years now with a co-founder, Michael. We've been working together for 8 years prior to that in a previous agency where we ran social media and influencer marketing campaigns for brands. So we've used that experience to inform our approach at House and start something new and hopefully a little bit different.
Something really exciting. So in terms of House Talent, supporting and representing creative professionals or influencers, as most people know them, that your experience in digital marketing, why House? It's a great place to start.
Yeah. We had an agency. Well, I had an agency that looked after hospitality, lifestyle, food and beverage brands, and we would manage all of their kind of digital marketing activities. So their creative content, their social media management, their influencer marketing campaigns, or their ambassador programs. And through that experience, kind of running the campaigns day to day on managing, the brand's social channels. We had some, we worked with talent representation agencies or a lot of digital talent, and enjoyed that experience of kind of working directly with creators and brands to create really exciting content. That kind of experience allowed us to kickstart House and work now talent side, which is, I guess, more hands-off in a sense that you're not actively running the brand campaign and you don't have to execute the content yourself. You're just kind of liaising between parties. But yeah, I guess to summarize, the experience that we had working brand and agency side has informed what we've done on the representation piece.
And in terms of representing that talent, how do you think your background in digital marketing has kind of affected that? Because you know the whole scope, from start of a brand all the way to the producing content, right?
Yeah. I would say I've worked in agency, I had an agency or I've worked with brands and managed these campaigns for 10 years. So my entire experience has informed our approach at House. We always try to lead with ideas or creative approaches or a creative strategy. And the first-hand experience we have has allowed us to kind of lead any communication, be it, sharing perspectives with talent or pitching to brands, always kind of leading with some value and some insight, which has gone well for us so far. It's served us well.
And our favourite question for today, when you think about the term creative influence, what does that mean to you beyond kind of what we see online, beyond the follower accounts and the aesthetics?
For me, I think creative influence is very closely linked to creative integrity. And it's very easy to get caught up in the noise of social media. And it's very much, it's an omnipresent, always on, more is more kind of industry experience.
Yeah, we're sat with 3 cameras, more is more. The stress.
But to kind of the creative integrity, to kind of achieve that, I guess, it's such a skill to be able to sit back from all the noise on social and distance yourself slightly and be able to take inspiration, but from a distance, versus feeling inundated with trends and different types of content and things that you feel compelled to post just because you think it will serve you in the future. So I think that real influence is derived from creative integrity and, being able to consistently create content that is uniquely yours, in your own voice, in your own style, consistently is a real skill. And that's what sets apart, at least for me, a good creator versus a credible creator that will kind of survive, as it will, the volatility and the growth of the industry.
Can we break that down a bit more? Because I think when we've spoken about, influence and influencers, I always think of my sister. I've told you this before, but, my sister's a musician. She put her portfolio literally on Instagram in lockdown and built up to 10,000 followers. And that's known as like a micro influencer, is it?
Yeah.
And she now has a bit of representation. She gets free bass strings, things like that. So it's good for her. But I think there's a shift, or you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but that shift in being an influencer from not necessarily needing millions of followers, but actually just having like an affiliation and, like you said, a genuine connection with an audience, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you've hit the nail on the head with your sister's focus being about her music and then working with like-minded brands. I spent so much of the last year thinking, or maybe obsessing over kind of niches. And I really strongly felt that as the industry was growing and it was evolving, niche would be the next thing. And at times when we were trying to grow the business, that was a little bit difficult because we were like, oh, we've got this amazing creator that wants to work with us. But then we were like, but they don't quite have much of a niche or much of a focus. So should we take them on? Should we not? But we kind of redefined our positioning and consolidate it to being very focused on creative individuals who are creative professionals. So that interior designers, authors, upholsterers, home renovators, a male relationship coach, sustainability champions, but people who have a real focus, a real niche, I think will kind of cut through the noise and, build credible platforms and hopefully credible careers that then are able to be sustained, because anyone can be a creator nowadays. Anyone can pick up their phone and create content. And I think that focus, that kind of niche focus and kind of consolidating what you're about and what you want to post about is what's going to kind of allow you to stand through the test of time and work with the brands that you want to.
Yeah. And before we move on to kind of the iterate bit in terms of house and the business model and learning from mistakes, so we can talk about that. But just to kind of plug into influencer marketing for those who might be listening who don't necessarily know, because I'm still understanding this. So you've got user generated content. Like if we literally go to basics, which is known as UGC. UGC. That's when the influencer creates the content and then the brand posts it.
Yeah, an influencer or a creator. You have some UGC creators are people who just create content for multiple different brands as a full-time job or as a consultant or a freelancer.
And then they get paid, if they get paid, hopefully they do, as a business, for a piece of content or a series of content.
Yeah, a brand will... A project at the moment, it's a paint company that would like to create user-generated content showcasing their sample packs. So they're working with one of our creators to just create a series of 15-second videos showcasing the packs in action. So just a few little clips of opening the boxes, seeing the different samples, a couple of voiceover pieces, kind of detailing what is included in the pack. And then they'll use that content on their own channels or in their own advertising. So, but it isn't connected necessarily to the creator's feeds. They don't have to post it promotionally.
Okay, so that's the user-generated. Almost like paying for an asset, paying for that 15-second video or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And then you've got the product placement. Is that right?
Yeah, or a promotional placement or a collaborative campaign. However, I think people use different terminology across the industry, but I guess the most standard thing people think about when they look at influencer marketing examples is a brand or an agency hiring a creator to promote a product or service.
I've, because me also being an artist, as well as kind of working in the digital marketing space, there's a few, I feel like different kind of influencers or content creators that are coming out that I'm really aspiring to. So there's a florist called Hamish, I can't remember his surname.
Hamish, is it Powell?
Powell, I think. And he's an amazing florist. And then, for example, a car brand paid, whatever, engaged with him to create a short reel where he's going to the florist for the day, he actually then creates a sculpture out of the flowers, but then drives the car to the market and back. And you're thinking, well, okay, social media, I don't know, a few years ago, I would have thought that's so random, but it really works, you're advertising a car to people that are following a florist.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I think it's a subtle selling piece because you, as the audience, you don't feel like you're being overtly advertised to. He's not there flogging a flower spray. Yeah. He's there kind of, as you would expect, driving to his place of work. So it feels more authentic, it feels more natural. And I think that makes it easier for audiences to engage with that type of content. And then for the brand, that's beneficial because they get better social metrics and hopefully social conversion.
Yeah. Well, then I stalked the brand and it had massive hits on his reel. So, it works. Well, whether it then goes to sales, that's a different story. So in terms of those authentic kind of collaborations, influence, at House, I know you're starting to do events and things like that behind the scenes. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I think on the brand campaign side, one thing I really like about working with the creators that we work with, because they are professional in their own field, there's a lot of scope to go beyond that kind of standard promotional campaign. They're not just, for example, if one of our creators she's a digital designer and she's a home renovator. And she's renovated her own home, but she is an incredibly talented, self-taught upcycler. And one of her brand campaigns that she's just launched was her working with a company to renovate their office. And I thought it was genius because they are kind of subtly selling their brand ethos, their brand values, getting some, amazing brand placement out there while simultaneously, because Erica, construction firm, or construction's the wrong word, they make tools. They're getting lots of detail about their products into an ad that feels really authentic, and then working with Dot to renovate the office herself using all of the supplies and materials. So I think that kind of lends itself to the example that you talked about with that kind of subtle selling, or that really closely aligned link that if it doesn't feel like you're being advertised to, it's probably a really good campaign.
Yeah. Kind of going back to the running of the business, and then we'll touch on kind of the managing of talent a bit again in a minute, but the kind of messy, magical iteration bit, what were some of the early challenges of building House, kind of the business in the creator economy?
I think initially what we found difficult was working with the right people, and understanding the dynamic of the working relationship, because when I worked with brands previously, there's always been a marketing manager or a brand manager that you're communicating with, so the relationship is more formal objectively. When you're working with creators, the work is so much more personal, and so it's understanding how best you can kind of work with them to kind of deliver on their goals, be that commercial or creative, whilst also trying to help them kind of professionalize, if that's a word, the type of work they're doing for long term. And that was initially quite difficult because we had a wealth of experience brand and agency side, and we'd worked with some incredibly reputable brands, but we hadn't done anything in the creator space. So it was kind of demonstrating that we could do the talent piece, even though we hadn't done it historically, and finding people that would kind of work with us in that respect. We had some great people that worked with us initially that kind of we knew through the industry or networking, and so there was a great deal of trust, but it's hard to deliver on all of the goals when you're starting out. And I think there's so much noise, and anyone can kind of say they're an influencer expert these days. If you go on Instagram, it's saturated with experts, and there's so much noise saying talent deserve this, creators deserve this, creators deserve to get paid X, Y, and Z. And I know wholeheartedly agree that they should get paid, but some of the content out there about how they should be treated and how they should work, I don't think is entirely accurate or entirely reflective of the reality. So in where there was so much noise about what creators should be experiencing, achieving, doing with representation agencies, we found it really hard to keep up with that because we weren't doing everything. And I'm very transparent from the get-go. All of our work processes are incredibly transparent. Everyone has access to their emails. They have access to a dashboard. Like, we couldn't be more transparent if we tried, but whilst doing all of that, it's very hard to kind of deliver on people's dreams. And this industry is so fixated on dreams and goals and wanting to achieve all that kind of stuff. So to cut a very long spiel very short, initially we found it tough to do everything when we were just starting out because this industry asks for everything.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to think because obviously you're dealing, like you said, one side is almost business to business, it's directly to brands.
Yeah.
That's a very kind of comfortable position for an agency person with that experience, saying this is the fee, this is the brief. And then on the other side of the coin, a creative, like I'm thinking of myself as an artist that, now a professional artist, but previously making art for fun. And then it becomes very personal.
Yeah.
And then how do you balance that, request for a brief to film something in a specific way?
Yeah.
So balancing, it's two totally different sides of the brain for me. It's like one part is a commercial brief and getting paid for that brief. And the other part is, I don't know, without sounding cheesy, playing with paint and enjoying being creative. And I suppose, in terms of the people that you've worked with or, different people that I know are influencers or, positioning themselves online, creating content, finding that balance is really hard. I find it hard. And I've got I spent 7 years running an agency. And even when I do the art work and I know that I need to work to a brief, I know in the back of my head I need to work to a brief. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to paint that though. And then I've got to set up my phone and film it, you know?
It's tough. And it also, because it's such a comparable industry, I don't think you wouldn't have a brand manager at a champagne brand, then like going on another champagne brand's Instagram and then, or LinkedIn channels and comparing themselves to the brand manager working there. Like I've never had a work experience environment where people so actively compare themselves. And I think it's because social is so accessible. All a creator has to do is pull up their phone, go on Instagram, and it's like 5, 6, 7 examples of other people who they might think they're similar to getting work with brands that they might not be getting at the time. So it's hugely comparable. And I think that feeds a bit of imposter syndrome for some people because they think, oh, well, they've got that. Why haven't I got this? So that communication piece is key to try and help people kind of navigate an industry that is evolving, but also trying hard to keep up with itself. There's always stuff happening, always new trends, new things going on. Sorry, I don't really know what I'm saying with this one.
No, you're good. I feel like it's, if you think of house talent as a business, it's like a kind of, without being crude again, it's like the motherly figure of like, that feel, if I'm a content creator and I'm working with yourself, and then you're kind of protecting and working as the middle person to that influencer. And I suppose then that comes into it, negotiation. Like, we're on the Ideas Machine podcast in terms of ideas and presenting those, your job, I don't know. I just think if you think of influencer economy and all of that, it's because we're so used to it on our phones. It seems so easy, and it's not. It's so not, is it?
No.
It's a huge thing to be doing. It's a new type of business, right?
Yeah. And guidelines change often and best practice changes often. So yeah, it's not, I think it could become a very mentally taxing job to be a creator. And I know for some, they do find it exactly that. So I think having some discipline with yourself is key if you want to do this long term. But I think also if you are then, like you mentioned, a professional in your field and then actively sharing your work and building online, hopefully that does allow you a bit more discipline than if you were, say, a lifestyle creator, because your focus is your work and showcasing your work. And so because you are in that work mode, hopefully you can have slightly more, correct me if I'm wrong, slightly more wholesome response to doing it within the work day. Whereas I think if you're creating lifestyle or travel content or fashion content, even, you're kind of you kind of always
what follows you.
Yeah, exactly.
You've always got to imagine if you're at dinner with your partner or a friend and you're like, film me eat this. It's a whole thing, isn't it? If iPhone is following you. I think I was going to mention your co-founder. You said Michael. He also creates content, right? He's a creator himself.
Yes.
And so he, from that experience, I'm sure brings a lot to the table in that respect.
He has a great amount of perspective. I really like that. He's very ambitious and he's very aspirational, which is a great quality because he has those ambitions for our talent and also for the campaigns and brands that we work on. But he's also very real. So, he understands, but both from, being a creator himself, but also an influencer marketing professional, he understands, what brands will and won't pay for and what's reasonable and what's unreasonable. So we always try to be honest with people, and sometimes that doesn't always work, but I think it's the most justice you can do in a working relationship that of this nature. It's only always going to be collaborative.
Yeah. And in terms of then content as a creative, and sharing, I feel like we've spoken about, everything is so online that it's all about what's behind the curtain, building in public. Like in terms of a business, I love house talent when you're sharing on social media, you're very open and, like you said, honest, like you're actually practicing what you preach. A lot of founders might sit here and say, oh yeah, we're really honest. And then that doesn't reflect within their kind of what they do. But yeah, I've loved seeing bits that you've shared. I'm trying to think. I can't remember. It was about payment for influencers and kind of viewpoints on that. And I think that's really hard from an entrepreneurial point of view, is trying to decide what do you share and what do you not. And the same as a creator, right? What do you share? What do you not? What's authentic? What's not? And I think there's so much of a tendency to share everything.
Yeah.
But as I'm learning as an artist, there's something about being an elusive artist that's really important, not to share everything. And then because we've grown up with phones and social media and everything from a young age, it's like you just have a tendency to share everything. I now edit the reels I want to share and then leave them in my drafts. I'm like, because it's like the dopamine of wanting to edit something. I've gone off on a tangent there.
No, I like that though. I think you do feel compelled to pick up your phone and share something, but I'm always try to put in my back of my head, I'm like, who is it for? Like, is it for me, or is it going to be valuable to someone? And
what is value? Like, what is value then, right? Whether it's for a brand or for building, think of the value might come back to my sister, because it's my best example that I, understand well, is that she's actually, like, she gets hired on musicals and is on tour currently based on her portfolio being her Instagram and having those followers, which is crazy. But it's also, it has provided that value. But it was so much effort to do, to post every day in lockdown a video of her playing the bass. I don't have that consistency.
Yeah.
It's a crazy amount of consistency. So was there a moment where you thought about pivoting or rethinking your approach to house?
Yes, I think initially, I mentioned slightly earlier that when we first started out, it was hard to kind of understand exactly the type of people we wanted to work with based on our previous experience, because we always want that to be the forefront of what we're doing. We want, when we approach any piece of work, I think we really want both the brand and the creator to feel fairly compensated, both creatively and commercially. So finding the right types of talent to approach and people to work with was a process. And like I said earlier as well, I was obsessing over niches because I thought that's, the more saturated social becomes, the more people will want to carve out, conscious consumption and look for specific people to follow versus feeling kind of inundated by the scroll. So earlier last year, we redefined our position slightly to kind of use a tagline, which is a bit corny, but we like to say we represent creative professionals with social platforms. And that is defined as anyone who has a creative profession any kind of grounding or professional experience in what they're doing and what they're posting about. So we work with interior designers, artists, stylists, an upholsterer, home renovators, chefs, and most recently a relationship coach. So anyone who's got credibility behind the creativity, I think is who we'd like to work with. But that pivot was, well, I guess I would love to call it a pivot because that's the trendiest way to describe it, but it allowed us to kind of be more focused in our work in both, how we communicate with talent day to day, how we build goals decks and opportunities for them, but also how we pitch them to brand partners, because the pitch needs to be super focused to be successful.
Yeah, and it makes me think, again, about ideas and how do you talk about credibility. You've got to, when you pitch, give away enough, but not too much, right? And so having your own format for that to help your creators, it must be super important.
Definitely.
So moving on to our last section, which is always about implementation and what listeners, I was going to say influencers, you're all influencers now if you're listening, what you can take away. You've got so much to share, and I'm like, where in terms of tips and things that people might take away, I suppose there's the part about being an influencer and a creator, what might you suggest people do, and then as an entrepreneur and learning and building, should we start with the creator side?
Yeah, let's do that.
What tips do you have for any creators out there?
So whether you're an established creator or an aspiring creator,
that's me.
I would say you're more established. The first thing I would do is reframe the word influence as opportunity. So instead of focusing on vanity metrics, be that followers, engagement, etc., albeit all that stuff is really nice, look at your platforms as a means to expand the opportunities for yourself and what you want to achieve. We're really lucky at House that we work with creators that are really aligned with this goal. They're very considered in their work. They're very, very thoughtful with their approach to brand campaigns, be them gifted, paid, or even organic content. And that really helps set them up for long-term success. I think focusing on, what do I want to use these platforms for versus day-to-day, how many likes am I getting? What's my next campaign? So that's the main tip that I would give a creator or an established creator.
Yeah, so from yourself as like an entrepreneur and starting House and learning from mistakes and having lots of ideas, what would you advise another entrepreneur out there?
I would advise to trust your gut. Like, that served me really well with this with this venture, and to grow. There is you can really achieve what you want if you grow slowly. I think in a previous business, I worked with people who were very focused on success and metrics and numbers and growth and yada yada yada. I didn't feel, commercially it made sense for the business, but creatively I felt drained by that. So with House, what I'm really proud of is that we've worked with good people at all stages. So we've worked with an amazing person doing our branding, your incredible support, doing our websites. We had great accountancy setup and support. We've always worked with great creatives when we run events, but that costs money and that takes time. And that time has meant that we've grown slower, I guess, than others potentially in this sector. But I think it's really helped us lay the foundations for long term. So my advice would be go slow.
Yeah. So I like going too fast. It's a hole I fall into. We haven't touched on your events, so House Connections. Could you just tell us a bit about those? They're super exciting.
Sure. A massive part of the talent management job is to pitch talent for brand and campaigns. I find pitching really boring. And we wanted to do something a bit different. I mean, selfishly, I live abroad. And so,
Ria's my first international guest, everyone. I'd just like you to know. Sorry, carry on.
When we're, the best relationships are those formed face to face, I think, even with the luxury of hybrid working, which I'm a big advocate for. However, having a coffee and discussing, upcoming campaigns and upcoming work is always, objectively going to be better than over email, or at least it has been in our experience. So, we found that Michael and I both have first-hand experience working brand side, so we know how inundated you get with talent inquiries, management inquiries, requests. These people have inboxes that are overflowing. So, and simultaneously, we find pitching really mundane. So we wanted to do something different to kind of cut through that noise, or to try, and I know I keep saying that, it sounds slightly corny, but we wanted to just basically get in front of the right people at the right time and get them to read our talent roster.
And meet each other and be in person, right?
Yeah. We also wanted it to be fun for us, because we thought if we're a small business and, this is our day-to-day, it may as well be something, we may as well create an event we'd love to go to. And lots of events in the creator industry, I find at least, are quite transactional, because creators feel compelled to pitch themselves because they want to get as much out of it as possible. There's nothing wrong with that. But we wanted to do something a little bit different. So we devised an event called House of Connections. It's a creative networking, or we've called it creative speed dating event, where brands, agencies, marketeers come and connect, and they'll have a glass of wine or non-alcoholic beverage of choosing, some great canopies, an 80s playlist curated by yours truly. And then we did 2 rounds of speed dating sessions where people were given kind of very cringy cue cards and 4 minutes to go and meet lots of different people in the room. And we were a bit apprehensive before we hosted it about whether people would get involved or if it would be a bit static. But it went really, really well. We did the first one in October. We got wonderful feedback about how much of the event was so focused on connection and conversation versus it feeling, like they were getting sold to. And it was just nice to be in a room of creative marketeers, to be honest. So we've done the first one. We're coming back for round 2 on the 4th of March, this time with a little elevated speed dating.
Oh, I'm scared. I'm going to the next one. I'm going to have to brush up on my speed dating.
I went to a party at the weekend and played Assassin. And I thought for a minute, maybe we could play Assassin at this event. And then I just thought, you know what, Ray, that's
the ideas. You're having the ideas.
Too much for people.
Oh, well, I hope it goes really well. And I'm going to be there. So I'll see. And we'll all see it on social. So if people want to follow along, who are listening, and want to see more about what you do, where can they find you? Everywhere, all socials.
Yeah, I'm in Portugal. You can find us on Instagram at House Talent Co. We don't post hugely regularly, but we're going to step up our game. Or on LinkedIn.
Nice.
I'm starting to post more unsolicited thoughts about the industry online.
It's important.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming, and thank you everyone for listening. If you would like to follow along, you can watch and see the podcast all at theideasmachine.substack.com, and we'll be sharing using the hashtag #theideasmachine. Thank you, Ria, for coming.
Thank you for having me.